All right, Ms. Renu, we can start.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voices, being brought to you by Radio Zindagi, my favorite time, every Thursday at 12 o'clock. And today it's a date, just like I said on Facebook. Today is not just a show, we're actually on a date. And we'll find out why we're on this date. But again, I'd like to begin by first thanking Radio Zindagi, Neeraj, Seba, Ira for always giving us this opportunity for sharing and discussing topics that affect and interest the community. And the one today is of special interest to me, and all my friends are on the panelists today. So I'll begin by saying I'm Miss Renu of Genius Kids, but today I will go by Auntie Renu. And on that note, let me introduce my wonderful panelists, because today's topic is about this Indian matchmaking series that everybody's been watching on Netflix. And we're going to talk about Auntie Seema and her show. And of course, what we learned in the show, whether we agree with it, whether we disagree with it. And there's no bashing. So I know a couple of people wrote to me on Facebook and said, you shouldn't be bashing. We're not bashing anybody. It's just like a product review, a movie review. That's all it is. It's a healthy discussion where people have opinions. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So on that note, let me introduce all my buddies in this wonderful panelists for Thursday. We have first, in no particular order, I'm just going to look at the way Zoom has presented them to me. We have, of course, first Archita. Archita is, I'm going to go back. I need my glasses over here, of course. I've got them on. Archita Mandal is a filmmaker with a background in cloud security space in the tech industry. She has an executive education from Stanford Graduate School of Business and believes in standing behind humanitarian causes that uplift society. So welcome, Archita.
Thank you for having me on the show, Raymond.
Next, we have my good friend and partner in crime on a lot of discussions. I have many friends today with me. We have my friend in crime. I'm introducing now in the order of Zoom. So we have Anu Natarajan, who is the former vice mayor of Fremont and also an architect in urban design and planning, and a mom of a beautiful young lady, Pranali, who's not quite of age to get married, but will be soon in about 10 years. So we're going to hear what Anu has to say on that.
And then we'll come to Auntie Renu then.
And we come to Auntie Renu for sure, because thanks to COVID, Auntie Renu may have to restart her matchmaking business soon again. And then, of course, we have Sarika Batra. Sarika and I go back when Sarika was a little girl, so she's the cause of all this gray hair, of course. And she's the founder of Andaz TV, which has shows televised on Sony, and a current, very well-known series called Meet the Drapers. And Sarika is also my winner of Miss San Francisco, India, going back hundreds of years. Welcome, Sarika.
Yeah, I think it was 1994.
Was it?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. 1994. That was wonderful. Yeah. And also another young gentleman who I've known since he was a kid as well.
Not so young anymore.
Not a kid anymore.
Not
but
a kid anymore. Yeah.
Manesh Judge, he's a well-known business entrepreneur and a longtime resident of the Bay Area, and an extremely talented musician and tabla player who's performed with world-renowned names. And in actual fact, you and Kush Khanna did one of my first little jingles for one of my, for Prem Bandhan.
Yes, as well.
My matchmaking show. Yeah.
Do you remember we also performed at the San Francisco pageant as well with Valerie? That was in Burlingame, I think, right?
Yes, it was. That was my very first show. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
And last but not least, we bring Wendy Newman, who's an author and a dating and relationship expert who has led hundreds of workshops to over 70,000 people internationally. And her book, 121 First Dates, How to Succeed at Online Dating, there's a whole series of them here, has been now optioned for a television series, and she's getting love from Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, Washington Post, you name it. So welcome, Wendy.
Thank you for having me. Really happy to be here.
So thank you all, and thank you for taking the time to be on this show. And again, I said, thank you, Radio Zindagi, and today is going to be a very entertaining show. So let's begin with, I'm going to begin with Wendy, actually, before we talk about the show. So Wendy, tell me a little bit about what you do. Are you a matchmaker? Are you a relationship coach? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
I mostly work with women, and I lead workshops to help women learn how to partner well and understand men better. And I have a whole host of pre-recorded products around dating and figuring out who you want to pick and how to do it well to succeed at dating in today's world. So I have a book for that, and I also have audio products for that. And so mostly what I'm doing these days is I'm writing. I'm working on screenplays and writing an advice column and writing. Yeah.
So do you work just only with women?
I do work with men from time to time, but mostly my audience is women.
Okay, thank you. And did you get a chance to watch the Indian Matchmaking series?
I did. I ate that series up as fast as I could. I don't think I've ever binge watched something so quickly in my life.
Well, great. So we'll get to your opinion on the show in a few minutes. So moving on, Sarika, tell us why you were intrigued on being on this show. I know I called you to be on it, but why did you agree to be on the show?
Oh, so many reasons. You know, the show sparked a lot of different conversations in general. I know a few days after, just social media went nuts and people were like, you know, the show is putting women down. It's all of these old school ideologies of you must be fair, you must be a certain height. I mean, luckily for me, I'm 5'3". God forbid if I was 5'2", I would have never gotten, or I would have never, no one would have liked me in the Indian community, you know, or, you know, dusky skin doesn't work. And, oh, she's a 10 because she's nice and tall and fair and good family. And that kind of stuff in our community in general really bugs me, and it has for a very, very long time. Like, why are we so superficial? I think this just opened that up and shed light on that topic for me. And I just thought it would be a fun, juicy conversation.
Great, wonderful. Manish, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm the only one who hasn't seen the show here, but
You can talk about matchmaking. We can definitely talk about matchmaking.
And I like Sarika, I think that I've always wondered. I remember, don't you remember, Ranu, the India West ads, looking for a homely girl for my fair-skinned boy, 5'10", Khatri, Jat, whatever, who has MBBS, but he has his residency. I mean, we grew up with that crap. And I always wondered, who the hell writes that stuff? What's it all about? What are they thinking? So I think that this has been going on forever. And I think that, yes, the show has sparked it, and I get it. And I will watch the show, but I didn't have to watch the show to know what's going on and kind of understand my experience. So like Sarika, I've always wondered, like, dude, what's this all about and why? Why are we like this? So that's why I'm here.
Wonderful. And you know, it's funny, but the matrimonial column in India West used to be my entertainment on Friday night when I was single. All us ladies would get together with our drinks and we would go through that. And then I would be the auntie that would make the fake calls to the phone numbers. So trust me. And quite a few of them turned out to be my friends on the other side. So it wasn't funny after a while. But anyway, so Archita, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So did you get to see the series?
I did. I binge watched it, and I was equally excited, just like Manish and Sarika were talking about a lot of important discussions around topics important to particularly the South Asian community. So when Seba approached me, I said, yeah, I'm on.
Great. Anu, your thoughts?
I binge watched it too. And every time I got annoyed with the show, I wasn't sure if the show was annoying or what it was depicting was annoying. And so it was interesting because you could see this as pure entertainment, which was hard to do, or you could see this as a reality check and a platform to have this conversation, which is why I'm excited to talk to all of you today about our thoughts.
So my first question will go out to Sarika. So Sarika, you know, I mean, having an auntie or a relative introducing someone, especially in our South Asian community, it's known. I mean, we all know it. As soon as you turn the age of like 21 and you graduate from school, what happens? All the aunties start saying, when are they going to get married? When is he going to get married? When is she going to get married? And then our parents start asking about eligible partners, right? So going back to the old traditional matchmaking is there. And then suddenly along came online dating and online matchmaking, and suddenly all these aunties disappeared or somewhat went into the back scenes. And I guess young kids nowadays swipe left and right and do all kinds of things on these apps. I mean, I just watch people go, you know, swiping and doing things and getting likes and whatever. What are your thoughts on that? Have you ever tried a personal matchmaker, or have you ever tried the online? What are your thoughts?
You know, Renu, throughout my life, I think I've tried all and everything. So I remember my early 20s where the community was trying to set you up with everyone. And it was purely based off of, and my mom would say things like, what's the boy's salary? And I used to get so mad. Like, I'm like, why is that a question? Why do we need to know his salary? Like, who talks like that? Who asks like, well, how much money does he make? Like, who talks like that? You know? And then I've done the matchmaking thing for a little bit, you know, and where I got set up on a few dates. They weren't really matches for me, and they weren't Indian. It was just a general matchmaker. And I've done the online dating thing. Now, the issue I have with online dating, and I think a lot of people have that right now, is there's way too many options. And it's so easy to just wait for the next better. You can always look for someone better, right? I kind of like the olden days when there wasn't online dating and you met someone and you fell in love and you just made it work because you had no other option. So and you made it work because that's what was in front of you and that's where you had chemistry. I feel like that's gone. So I think between matchmaking and online dating, matchmaking might actually be a better option because at least it's like, oh, this is a curated group just for you as opposed to thousands of people in this endless pit. Like, how do you even decide, you know?
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So Wendy, I'm curious, a lot of people, when we posted our flyer, I'll be blunt, a lot of people said, why do you have a non-Indian on your show? How is she going to understand the South Asian views in the community? So we want to find out, do non-Indians have the same issues? I mean, we talk about having light-skinned, which obviously you guys don't ask because you're all light-skinned. We talk about having light-skinned, fair, non-wheatish complexion, and we want to check their salaries and what they're doing. What happens in the mainstream community?
Well, I'm really grateful that you had me on. So thank you very much. And I don't fully understand the community. I do have many Indian women friends, Sarika being one of them. And I'm really grateful for that window into your world. And what I noticed about the show is there isn't anything shocking or different except for the family relationships that you're marrying into a family, which you don't get in the States, right? You just marry the person because we're all about the me, not the we. And I think that everything in there is translatable to America, Canada, Europe, everywhere, because it's all the same. The volume, though, the knob on the volume is turned all the way up to 10 in your community. The patriarchy is alive and well. Women need to adjust. All of the pieces around thin and attractive and young and light-skinned and all the things, which, by the way, I don't get the attraction to the pasty white. I just really don't. It makes no sense to me. I mean, it is not prettier, so I don't get it. But it's real, and it's real in the Black community. It's real in all kinds of other communities, and it's heartbreaking to me. And I think one of the biggest heartbreaking things about this show is I see, and like I'm sure you do too, so much beauty in the world, and it seemed to have the most narrowest focus of available beauty. There was just no diversity in beauty. Thin, young, fair, tall, that's it. And the women on the show were all so spectacular and beautiful, and some of them, one in particular, was really picked on for being not attractive and being fat, and I thought she was stunning. So that was a heartbreaker for me.
And do you also get, in the mainstream, do you also are women told that you have to sacrifice and give in once you get married, and you basically throw away everything that your dreams are because you have to compromise with the man?
No, no, this whole adjust business was mind-blowing to me. That you have to adjust was mind-blowing. And the Indian women that I know and love and run with in San Francisco are all powerhouses. They're all really successful women who are moving and grooving out there in the world. And to see like that's a bad thing. Wait, what? Educated, successful, running their own companies, and now they have to adjust for the family and the man. That was also heartbreaking. And to see how many women in the show, it almost felt like, well, you just can't have a relationship, you can't have a marriage, you can't have a life because you're too successful.
Right. Thank you for that. Archita, you're a very successful young lady. My question to you is, you don't have to answer it. If you're married, how have you met your spouse? If you're not married, what are you using as opportunities? And then your take on the show. What were your thoughts when you watched it? Did you cringe like I did?
I did cringe a bit. So going back to your first question, I am married with 2 kids, a teenager and a toddler. How did I meet my spouse? I met him at work, and we kept in touch. We started dating. That's how I found him. And I, unlike a lot of other people, I heard Sarika say she went through all of those different loops. I haven't ever gone, done online matching. My parents were pretty much like, get married when you want to, travel the world, if I can call them progressive, that's what they were. And so all the girls in my family got married after the age of 30. So no pressure in my house to get married. So I can't come from that kind of a background. I just didn't even kind of look for guys. It just happened, dating just happened very sporadically. So for me, this journey, this was really interesting. Actually, I was just like, wow, I think I missed out on things, but maybe not. So I have two perspectives. Since I'm a filmmaker, I have a filmmaking perspective, and then I have just like everybody else, audience perspective. The filmmaking perspective was, okay, I can see the novelty it's trying to bring in, kind of dig all this thing and then get people really interested. Some cool filmmaking techniques have been used. Editing was a little choppy in some areas, and on purpose. I think the Aparna section was purposely, she was a little mean up front, but then when you see the show towards the end, you realize some of the things that she says, where she's coming from. It's on purpose. Seema Auntie was made to look really rude up front, but then you see towards the end, she was kind of nice to the single mom and how all the other good things that she's seeing in people. She was not using as many negative connotations towards the end. So I think that was very interesting how they built this show, right? From filmmaking perspective to loop people in. What did it offer me? Nothing really. That's not a genre I connect with. But it was interesting because it's important to be part of conversations in society. And Seba said, you have a week to watch it. You got to watch it. So I watched it like as if I'm doing my homework. I'm glad I did. And my husband, by the way, is American. So it was interesting. He was walking in and out. He's like, what are you watching? And then I'm like, this is the most trending show. And then he said, wow, this is different. And that's all he said. And then he walked out. So I didn't really have any important conversations at home. So I'm actually glad to be talking to you guys and seeing what others thought.
Thank you for your insight on that. So Anu, you got to watch the show too, right?
Yes, I did.
And did you watch it because we were doing the show, or did you already got hooked on it before?
I watched it because it kept flashing on Netflix as one of the top 10. So much like Never Have I Ever, I watched it out of curiosity. The first 10 minutes, I was super annoyed and almost shut it down, but decided I was going to binge watch the whole thing, and I watched the entire thing. A couple of things that really surprised me about what the show portrayed was, I grew up in India, in Bangalore, and I've seen this happen, and I've hated this whole concept of girl viewing. But to see girls, young women here in the US, and like everybody else talked about, being highly successful, having opportunities to meet partners, going online and saying that didn't work, and coming back to a matchmaker from India, surprised the heck out of me. I mean, and the other thing that surprised me was how much Seema Auntie seemed to travel. I mean, she was in Bombay, Delhi, Houston, all over the place.
I want to know how much she charged.
That's the other thing.
On her website. Yeah, yeah.
It must be a lucrative business.
Like, yeah.
And the sense of desperation. I mean, these women seem to think that they have to get married, that if they were single, that somehow the Indian community, the South Asian community viewed them as not having lived up to their full potential. I mean, so it goes back to this whole expectation that you can do whatever you want, but when you're 25, you get married, have kids, stay at home, watch the family grow. So that to me was really surprising too. It's just the sense of desperation that came through. And if I have to talk about the two most annoying people, were Aparna's mom and Seema Auntie.
What about Akshay's mom?
Yeah, Akshay.
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Akshay's mom, not Aparna. Akshay's mom.
I've completely gone blank. Which was the mom that had all that jewelry? They kept showing that jewelry.
Akshay's mom.
Yeah.
Akshay's the one who said he had seen 150 girls, right?
Correct.
Yeah, like any
But
of
the interesting thing about the show is none of those people got hooked up. In an actual fact, even Akshay's engagement broke a week later.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now we'll move on to Manish, who's not seen the show, but Manish, you're going to see it right after the show,
Yes,
aren't you?
that's the plan this weekend. I'm going to
Yeah,
binge
get those
watch it.
Subway sandwiches in and get a good
I will.
Okay.
I will.
So Manish, so Manish, let's talk about you. So
Yeah.
when I met you, you were a young boy and you were single, and now
Yep.
you're married. So tell
Yep.
us, did mom hook you up? Tell us who your matchmaker was, and what is your take on this whole matchmaking? Did you grow up like when they were younger? I know my kids used to say, "We don't need you to help us find anyone. Stop it, mom. We'll do it on our own." What were your thoughts on having an auntie or mom or someone matchmake you, and how did you hook up to your beautiful wife today?
So Simrat, came to my life, but I'll go backwards. So, I was born and raised here, and in the Bay Area, it was a small number of Indian families, but I was raised with a lot of Indianness because of my affiliation for music and learning classical music and performing and all that. So I think it was a freshman in college when I had a non-Indian girlfriend, and this particular weekend, I played tabla for Anup Jalorta. I watched Mehdi Hassan in Fremont on Saturday night, and I met Amitabh Bachchan on Sunday. I met Susie on Monday, and she goes, "How was your weekend?" And I was like, "Well, you tell me, how was yours?" She goes, "Well, I saw Star Trek with my grandma." And I go, "Oh, okay." She goes, "How was your weekend?" I was like, "You'll never believe this. I played tabla for Anup Jalorta. I saw Mehdi Hassan in Fremont. I was sitting, I could like touch the man, and I met Amitabh Bachchan, and I hung out with him for 2 hours." And she goes, "Who?" And I was like, "Oh my God, this is not fair. It's not fair to you, not fair to me." So that was kind of like where I was like, you know what? I think I'm a little too Indian for a non-Indian. And I think it'll just be really unfair for me to always sit there and try and have them measure up to who I am. And then me not be able to measure up to kind of like them too, because I'm always going to be involved in this kind of stuff. So I think that for me, that was a big deal. And then all of a sudden, Indian women were always beautiful, but there were just never enough of them around. I mean, you didn't start doing beauty pageants till the 90s, I guess, right? So I was a teen going into college. So I was like, okay. And I'll tell Sarika a good one too about Armand when he was just a baby, my son. And anyways, I'll tell you about that later. But anyway, so I guess I just started dating different Indian women, and I had a long-term relationship that blew up. And then it was 2002, and my mom goes, "So how's that dating life going?" And I go, "Well, it's okay." She goes, "Well, I'll tell you what. You know what you want, but I know what you need." Profound statement.
Yes.
And so she said, "Well, there's this young lady who's we know through another one who happens to be here in Fremont. She's going to be visiting actually, and here's her number if you want to say hi to her." And I think it was like a month before Simrat came here, and then first phone call, I was like, wow. And then the very first day that I met her, I picked her up from her family's house in Fremont, took her to San Francisco. We were hanging around the wharf, whatever. And then and then she was like, "So what are we doing?" And I was like, "Well, why don't you marry me?" The first day. And then I brought her home. She met mom and dad. My mom was leaving for a wedding. She took off her necklace and gave it to Simrat. And then we're celebrating 17 years this August the 22nd.
Congratulations. Wow,
Thank
what
you.
a story.
It's been a dream.
So in the end, mom was your matchmaker, right? Mom
Totally. She knew exactly what was up. She was like, "Look,
Person.
all this stuff that like you've been dating this one and you said, oh, she's hot and she's this and that." Didn't work out, Manesh. Didn't work out for you. So I guess for me, it was always just this major conflict between who I am as a person and then being able to be free. And I think that with past relationships, that was always the conflict. They were always trying to put me into a box and like, "Well, why are you hosting an event with President Clinton? What are you getting out of it? Or why did you do music for a film called Maya? Why did you spend 2 months doing music? Or why are you playing shows? Why are you like?" It was always why? And I just didn't want to answer that. So I found somebody who is like, "Yes, you should do it. Yes, you should do it. Yes, you should do it." Huge difference.
Let me ask you, was the question of, like we read in these matrimonial ads you brought up about want light skin, dusky, this and that. Be honest. Did you ever tell your mom, "I want somebody very light skinned, pretty, whatever"? Did that ever occur to you? Because I often wonder if Indian men think about things like that.
Nah, I don't think it was always that. I think it was always like, if you're at a wedding or a party or someone, you saw somebody cute, you're like, "Who's that?" That was normal. Like,
Yeah.
wow, who's that? But then they were always, if they're out of your league or whatever the heck it was, you're just like, whatever. But it never was like, mom, look. It was never like that. It was always those guys just hanging out. And so we're a hybrid generation. We're sort of in the middle. We're not really ABCDs, but we're somewhere in the middle. And I think all of us grew up with a lot of, again, 5 days a week, I was a normal American kid. And then on the weekend, I was an Indian kid. That was my life. So on the weekdays, I was cool with my high school friends and whatnot, but I didn't have the guts to bring home a girl or date a girl. And even my prom date and whatever in high school, my parents never met her. I mean, I went and picked her up and she was a cute blondie and we went and hung out and and I'm sorry, from a dinosaur generation, I shouldn't say that, but she was gorgeous. And my parents just didn't, it wasn't part of it. They weren't like taking pictures of me going to the prom. It was like, oh, Manesh is going to the prom. Here's his goodie. Here's the money. Go have fun. Have a good time. That was about it. But it wasn't like they're like, oh, let's meet your date. And, so my brother and I were like that. We kept it away. Like one time I think my parents met my only girlfriend was the day that she broke up with me, the same one, Susie, in high school. So yeah, we it was different. We just was a different generation, I guess. But now I think it'll be different. My boys, now I guess their interest in women is different because now it's a different generation. So they don't express the way we were. They weren't outlandish. They didn't watch 80s movies. They didn't watch Pretty in Pink and love girls openly the way we did. Now it's like you have to be politically quiet and correct. And I asked my son, I go, so Arman, you have a girlfriend? Do you like anybody? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay. So it's different. Just different.
Thank you for that. So we have a question over here. Somebody, one of our listeners, Vakil Kulvinder Singh. Thanks, Vakil. You always participate every week. Really appreciate it. He's written, okay, Renu, would you believe people don't care that much about color in the US raised Indian community? We look for professional goals, interest. Do you have something to share about your kids' experiences? We're not going to be talking about my kids right now. I'll get to that in a moment. My kids don't want me to talk about them, but I will answer your question soon, Vakil. Going back to Sarika. So Sarika, you've seen there's so many, we brought up about how women are, especially here, there are many South Asian women that are so successful, good looking, and still single and in their late 30s and 40s, right? And now I meet so many women and they talk about, we're going to freeze our eggs. If we don't find the right person, we're having this baby on our own. It doesn't matter. What are your thoughts on this? How are people meeting people? Because if these apps are not working, if this Auntie Seema scene is not there, then what is going to work? How are people going to meet?
So, what's interesting about people, I can comment on people in their late 30s, 40s, because we're all of the same generation. And Indian women that are very successful, there's a lot that are single, a lot. I mean, it's shocking. Beautiful, smart, successful. And I think it's because, like Manesh said, they came from that generation where they were in the middle somewhere, like American, but yet not Indian, had this stereotypical guy that they needed to get to make their families happy. That was hard to find. And then the men also were still not sure if they wanted that strong, powerful woman. They did, but they don't. We used to make jokes like, I remember this in my early 30s amongst my friends that, men want an Aishwarya Rai who will like bat her lashes and cook and clean, but she's also a doctor, but she doesn't really practice. Like, do you know what I mean? Because they were just, look, my wife's a doctor, but she stays home. Like, but she looks like Aishwarya Rai, And so it's like that in between phase. So no one was satisfied with anything going on. Women were becoming more independent. And how do they meet people now? I think Wendy might be able to answer this, but really they're just online. And after this Indian matchmaking show, I don't know how many of my friends have said, oh, I need a matchmaker. Oh, I need a matchmaker. I mean, I thought that was interesting because it's so old fashioned, right? If you think about it. But yet they're feeling like the online dating thing is just too cumbersome. It's hard work. It's like, it's like you need an agent. You know how you have a real estate agent sifting through lists? Like you need an agent to do this for you, And so I really think matchmaking is going to end up being the next thing.
So it's funny you say that. So some people are writing in, they want me to talk about my experiences, which is not what the show is about, but I'll quickly mention that, yes, I did matchmaking, and that's why I'm so intrigued about this show and I didn't do matchmaking by choice. I needed to pay some attorney fees in my custody battle. So I thought to myself, I need to do this. I started a group of divorced women because nobody wanted to know South Asian divorced women at the time that I was going through my divorce. So I started this singles group of divorced people, and it grew from 4 to a couple of hundred. And I used to just automatically start connecting people. And then one day I was trying to pay this attorney bill and I looked at it in desperation thinking, how am I going to do this? And one of my friends said, Renu, you're always matching people up and it's working out well. Why don't you get paid to do this?
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I started a matrimonial agency, which I did for 5 years, called The Reservoirs. And I had a radio show called Matrimonial Waves and a little, and Prem Bandhan. So I targeted South Asian community and I specialized like your agents specialize in areas. I specialize in divorced people, but I had a lot of singles with me. And I hooked up 180 people to be exact in 5 years.
Wow.
So you talk about lucrative. Yes, it was a very nice lucrative business that helped me get my kids.
You're the best person for this.
But I sold my business and moved away to other things when the online came, because I just didn't understand computers or online business at all. So I thought, okay, and I didn't do it like Auntie Seema in the sense that I went to people's homes. I wasn't going to do that, but I interviewed people extensively on the phone. And then, and even now, I still get requests now, and maybe I will start it up again. But I still get people who send me requests, and it's always, the line's always there. My son is very good looking and very successful. She must be tall, slim, and very pretty.
Fair skin and slender.
Yeah.
Yes, fair skin and slender.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder, but we're meant to be brown. Aren't we a brown color community? Where are we meant to be looking white? I don't understand. So, and
Do you think, Renu, do you think it's because the Brits ruled India and we kind of like still have this built in into our head that
Yeah,
like,
no, that is
you know,
one.
fit-
Colonialism.
you know,
It is,
I mean, that's
definitely.
wondering, right?
Yes,
Does that
it
kind of
is.
feed into our head?
absolutely. Yes, I still think it is. And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, I grew up in Kenya and people are obsessed about color in Kenya. You would think, we're meant to be third generation Kenyan. That mentality is still there. And even when your babies are born, the first question is not if it's a boy or a girl. Well, it is. First, if it's a boy. Secondly, is it light skinned? It's like, come on, wake up. So moving on, enough about me. But yes, friends, I will bring my show back. I promise you, I have a surprise for everybody soon. But I will be a better version of Auntie Seema. I promise that. So moving on to Wendy. Wendy, you're listening to all of us and you're probably thinking, what is wrong with everybody here? So you tell me, Wendy, I know you focus a lot on women and you've got some men clients. What is the best way to date? How do you find a partner? I don't even want to use the word spouse. How do we find life partners? Because nobody wants to be alone in this journey right now. So how do you successfully find somebody?
Yeah, I mean, it's never been harder in all of history than right now. Well, especially with COVID, but even before COVID, it was very difficult because you can't meet each other in a cafe anymore. To speak to a stranger and say, hi, how you doing? That's a nice blouse, is now looked on as kind of a creeper move. So men have backed way off from talking to strangers because they don't want to impede anyone's path and get in their way, and it's not consented. So there's no real consent with strangers out in the world to meet in the real world, like we used to say, right? So online is kind of the default. And I think Sarika is right that the matchmaking might be creeping up in your community as the next thing, because there really aren't any good ways other than through people, through church, through parties, but that doesn't happen anymore. And the older we get, the less parties and events we're going to usually, especially men. So it's tricky. It's very tricky to meet people.
So what would your advice be to a successful young South Asian girl who's independent, living on her own? She's in her 30s and everybody's putting pressure on her, but they're all saying, you got to give up your career. One of the things that really ticked me off in the show was this life coach. I couldn't understand as a life coach why she would give such bad advice. But her advice was, you must sacrifice, and whatever you've done, she claims she did the same thing, which if you did it, that's great. But why do women have to be considered the one to sacrifice? I understand compromise between both, but why do we have to sacrifice our careers to settle down? And what would your advice be to women out there who hear this all the time?
First off, I want to say there was a lot of really bad advice by the experts out there on that show. That's horrible advice. Like, no, don't tell them that. So my recommendation would be to go online. It's not my favorite mode, but it seems to be the only mode where you can very quickly meet someone that you couldn't meet in your day-to-day world. And I noticed that in my day-to-day world before COVID, all I had access to was the grocery clerk, the barista, and a few handful of other people. I didn't have access to professionals out on the street. right? So this is a way to actually get in front of somebody who might be a great match for you, right? That you wouldn't have access to in your real world. And I do not recommend settling. I am the person who did go on 121 first dates to meet my husband. I don't believe in settling. I don't believe in playing it down or getting rid of your career. I think that you should lead with exactly who you are and who you aren't, and wait for the right match to come at you.
Like
Thank you.
Aparna that everyone hated.
Thank
Aparna.
you for that.
Exactly.
There's a question here. Anu, I'm going to give this question to you. Is the show of jewelry a way to hook a girl or their family? Now, I know what your answer is on that, but as Indians, we love to brag, right? We like to talk about all the properties we have and all the jewelry we have. And I mean, why are we obsessed with this display of wealth, especially doing matchmaking? Why? And even now, for people and their way they want to be friends, they want to choose wealth to create their little groups for having parties. Why is that so prevalent in our community?
It's almost like this sense of classism. It's like you arrived. If it's new wealth, you have to flaunt it so people know that you've arrived and you've got the status. The show focused so much exclusively on one class, all of who came with the sense of entitlement. And the wealth and the jewelry was really obnoxious. I mean, who wears jewelry like that anymore? And for the mother-in-law to choose something for the daughter-in-law and say, you must wear this because this is a family thing was ridiculous. But it seems to be something that's prevalent in all of South Asia. And maybe Wendy can talk about how it works here, but this flaunting of wealth is not just for the person you're choosing, it's for the community. To say, look at my status. I have so much wealth, so anybody that comes into my family should match that or be subservient to the family and serve us, right? I mean, so those are the two ways of looking at the flaunting of wealth.
You've heard of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, haven't you?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Fire. I mean, it's an American thing too.
It is, but I don't look at the Kardashians as being mainstream. I mean, they are in this narrow slot by themselves, right? In so many ways. But here, in choosing your life partner, wealth becomes this huge issue. And disparity of wealth is one reason not to choose. I mean, this again, it goes back into these regressive ideas of classism, right? And casteism, keeping folks within the fold. And one of the things that this show could have done was, I mean, it surfaced all of these issues, but really didn't talk about it. In some ways, it normalized it and says, this is how it is, it's status quo, so that's how it is.
Thank you. Archita, I see your head nodding. Are you thinking of a movie?
Oh, I'm actually agreeing to everything Anu is saying. I agree. So one of the challenges, I think Indian matchmaking brought up a lot of points. They focused on different areas of India where, you know, certain things are more prevalent than others, but no resolution advice given was not even something you could take away. And at the end of the day, I don't know what it was offering. That was the challenge. Watching it, you know, I was cringing a little bit, but there were other things, and they did open it up for the world to see and discuss. And that's why we're here today. So there are some pros and cons, and makes us also aware of this age-old system, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
And that's what pretty much all the it's a highly defined algorithm that's being set up in software apps, and we're already doing it for ages here. So as Sarika was saying, I kind of think that I do find it a more customized approach at the end of the day. And I haven't gone through it, but I have total respect, and I've seen a lot of successful relationships come out of it. But just the show itself, as Anu was saying, I mean, I totally agreed. That's why I was nodding my head. I was like, yes, that's true. There's all these challenges, but what do you do with them? No resolution. So hopefully in the following sequels, they'll kind of tie it neatly together.
Thank you for that.
May
Yes,
I
go
give
ahead.
one actual piece of solid advice about the strong, successful women out there? You know, they kept showing Aparna and the unlovely pieces to that whole story, and then many women who were successful were having a harder time. And I just want to say, as a coach and as someone who spends a lot of time in the relationship world, it's not the success that's a problem. It might be in your culture, but for women here, especially in America, the success is not a problem. What is a problem is some of the unlovely traits that come with it, and not everybody has them. One of the things that Aparna exhibited was entitlement, right? That's unlovely. That is an unattractive quality. There was sort of a meanness and in the beginning, and then there was a third thing, which is, I got this. I got it. What do I need a man for? I can handle everything. I can buy my luxury car out of my house, and I've got this. So if there's absolutely no room for a man to come in and contribute anything, why would anyone come forward? So it has nothing to do with success. It has everything to do with the attitudes that can sometimes creep up. And I have to say, between my American clients and my Indian women clients, Indian women in general, I'm generalizing like crazy, are so much softer and open to receiving than my Western clients are. So you already all have this down. You already have the not entitlement, the open to receiving, and not the show off of I can do it myself, because those are the things that are a real turn off.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to read some comments from some of our listeners. Yogesh Patel says he doesn't understand why women have to sacrifice and change. Thank you for that. I agree with you. Wealth part comes from lots of parents, even in the US, in our own community too. Both my boys are grown up and not married yet, but we've told them that we're open to accept whoever they choose. That's wonderful. And Ishe Dubey, thank you for your comment. She writes, it's also when a woman speaks her mind, like if she's not okay to wear the jewelry given by mother-in-law, wearing that sari which she bought as per her taste, and ultimately we are the chalu per se. Okay. So Manish, we are getting ready to wrap up our show in about 10 minutes. So normally what I do about 10 minutes prior, I start getting everybody to give their closing thoughts and statements on this. And so for those who were thinking we were going to bash the show, we did not bash the show. We're just having a discussion. Okay, friends? So, and also somebody has asked me to start my matchmaking again, but with a lesser fee. No, honey, this is a lot of work. Okay. So no, I'll be charging a lot of money because I have to pay bills. But remember, you don't need 100 introductions to find a life partner. It just takes one. So that's another piece of advice I used to give my clients when they used to say, how many introductions are you going to give me? And I used to say, why do you need to have so many? If I can find you just that one, that's going to be enough. So Manish, to you, what advice would you give to men out there who are being pressurized by their moms to bring these light-skinned doctors, look like Aishwarya Rai, who's going to make the roti in the house, whereas the son really wants to have somebody that's going to go out with him and be at his level, but mom wants something else and he has to keep mom happy. What's your advice?
I think it's going to be a conflict always. It's not something that's going to go away that easy. But I do see that, like a lot of us, that we could have met somebody in college, or many of my friends did meet people in college. It worked out. It was okay. You know, it did go. Going forward, I think it's going to be hard. Definitely. I agree with Sarika that I think that it'll go through a phase where this online dating thing will kind of phase out. And then they will be talking to Auntie Renu going, hey, you know what? I kind of need somebody to help me find somebody. I think I even have a cousin who lives in Chicago who's got some sort of a matchmaking site. She left a high-tech world and she was like a PhD, and she gave it up, and she has something called Intersections Matchmaking. And I still get emails just because not because for me, but she just wants me to know how she's doing. So it's still going on. It is going to go on. And I think it's going to be, look, here's a big question too, Raina. Your kids are married now. At some point, my kids are going to be married. Then their kids will get married. I think it's going to get easier as time goes on. Look, the reality is that I might be the last generation where I'll be kind of looking at who they're getting married to, like, well, but I think going forward, it's going to change. It's going to westernize even more. And I mean, I have a cousin who got married in India, and I've got another cousin in India who she happened to marry a Caucasian guy who's from Denmark, who was working in India, and she's a Sikh Punjabi, and it was fine. And then I have another cousin, she was living with a guy in Delhi. And so I think things are going to keep changing. And as time goes on, that whole thing, as people become more educated and time goes on, we become more westernized, it's going to lessen that stranglehold. So where my parents were a little more involved and they were trying to do this, I'll be less involved. And then my boys, whoever they end up with, it's going to probably be like, hey, Dad, I'm getting married. And then if I'm invited, it'll be great. Or if I'm on the wedding card, it'll be great. Because that's what's going on now. Destination wedding. We're mailing out everything. And my parents are invited. And a few friends are invited. And gone are the big, the bashes where a whole family's standing there cutting the cake. And we're at the Marriott Hotel. That's gone. It's gone. It's not happening. Done. No more Marriott San Ramon.
Okay, as we get ready to wrap up our show, we're going to go into our closing statements here. This has been a lot of fun. And so somebody wants to know how my kids met. So my older daughter met through online. And in actual fact, I was one of those moms. I didn't bring the color into it, but for some reason, I thought engineers were really boring. So I told her, don't find an engineer. And so sorry, engineers, I just found them so boring. And so we initially tried, and then all we got were these doctors and dentists who were mummy's boys. And she looked at me, she says, Mom, you can't generalize. Can we just remove let's click the engineer and see what happens. And guess what? This application came in, and he had liked it through Facebook, and he sent her a message that I'm not on this site, but I recognize your picture, and can we, meet otherwise? And again, when she sent the introduction, I'm like, engineer is going to be really boring. And he took me by surprise. So I changed my mind on engineers there. And my second daughter had met someone through online, which I was very much against, the swipe left and right and all this nonsense. And but kids don't listen to their parents, and unfortunately it didn't work out, but that's okay. I always tell her there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and your mom didn't give up, and neither will you. So it works for some, it doesn't work for others. But on that note, let's wrap up. So Sarika, your closing statement on this whole thing.
My closing statement is, I'll keep it around the show since everybody's been watching the show. I think a lot of single women are watching this show thinking, gosh, look at it's difficult for everyone. And it doesn't have to be difficult. Just think of it as fun. And if you want to get a matchmaker, get a matchmaker. Go on dates, meet people, have a good time. Like my friends really stress out about this process, and it shouldn't be stressful. It should just be fun. And call Miss Renu if you want a matchmaker, or get a friend to find guys for you online for you, since the process is cumbersome.
I think those personal introductions make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because like Manish said, as a third party, sometimes you know what they need. Sometimes what you want and what you need is different. So I think as a third party, it validates a lot of things that you would not really ask someone about their family and stuff. So Wendy, your thoughts?
I was really surprised that, to me, the most important qualities aren't even looked at, which is how well do you solve problems together? How well are you able to empower each other, have each other's back? That never even really came into play. So that's, if you're out there and single, I would look at your matching levels of emotional intelligence and the positivity of, are you willing to get over things together, or do you keep getting stuck in negativity?
And Wendy, if you can give your information, if someone's listening in the show and they want to contact you, if you could give that out too.
Yes, my website is wendyspeaks.com, and I have all kinds of things from free to paid tools available in all the mediums, reading, watching videos, etc.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Archita, so you told us that you have married a non-Indian. So what's the advice you're going to give your children, and what's your closing statement on this?
My closing statement is don't take life too seriously. You're never going to get out of it alive. So this is just a process. The journey ahead is unseen, which is the matrimony. So just like Wendy recommended, how many times did you say? 121 times?
I went on 121 first dates, yes.
Just
my last question for that one.
By the way, from the age of 35 to 45, I was not young. Yeah.
Wow. See, there you go. I'm no relationship expert, but that's what I will tell my daughters, and that's what I did. And just have fun with the process, have an open mind, and definitely talk to Wendy and Renu here. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that. No, I don't claim to be an expert, but all I can say is I definitely agree with Sarika and Archita in saying, make it a fun process. People get so stressed, and they think they have to make a decision right away. You don't have to make decisions. And sometimes you should just go meeting someone, just like you're having a coffee with a friend. You're going for a job interview. You get it, you don't get it, that's okay. The decision should be yours. and not anyone else's. Anu, your thoughts. You're going to have, your daughter's still young and you have a long ways to go, but how do you feel about her dating, and what are your thoughts, and what is the advice you give her?
So I would say to my daughter, anyone looking for a life partner, is define what you want for yourself. Yes, the family is part of it, but you shouldn't be doing something just to please your family, because that never works out. And so just, I agree with this whole having fun with this, not just this process, but what happens at the end of it. Not everybody needs to be married. I mean, it's fine to be single. It's fine to get married and divorced and be single. Do whatever pleases you. The other thing that I will say is, again, there's been matchmaking informally in our communities forever. I mean, Renu's going to be an auntie. I'm an auntie to someone else. And every time I talk to Ash Kalra, he says, don't be an auntie. And so we all choose to do that informally, and that's fine. The thing that I will say about a person like Seema Auntie is how she puts women down constantly. There's this hierarchy, men and how women need to adjust, women need to compromise, women need to fit in like a glove into a new family and give up everything, like you said, Reina. So let's, as women, make sure that those are not the criteria, and men should also put their foot down when they're mothers. And for some reason, women turn out to be women's worst enemies. It's like when mothers are looking for wives for their sons, let's make sure that there's some sense of dignity in it.
Thank you for that. And in actual fact, I think we should remove the word husbands and wife and use the word life partner. Life partner is a much better word. So Manesh, your thoughts? And you're going to binge this, right?
Pardon?
You're going to binge the show now.
I'll message you guys at the end of the weekend. I'll let you know how it goes. I think that, look, it all depends on how a person's raised. If a person is raised very, very conservative ways, and I don't like conservative GOP me, I mean, like, they have a lot of tradition, highly religious. You're not going to be able to change somebody. If you go to the Gurdwara and they go to the Mandir, you can't force them to do what they're not going to be comfortable with. So you're going to have to be open-minded, and you're going to have to say it's all good. So I think a lot of the background has a lot to do with it. So I just hope that people have an open mind. They take it easy, like you said, go have fun around it, enjoy it. And life partner is a good word. And just, life's short, man. Just enjoy it. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yes, and maybe avoid dating during COVID, because wearing a mask, you're not going to know what the other person is all about. Right. Maybe just do a Zoom date. I recommend a Zoom date.
And Reina, we used to laugh about homely, because in America, homely meant not attractive. But I guess in India, homely meant that was someone who was like, who lived at home and was very, so we read those India Western, looking for a homely girl. And I'm like, why would somebody want an unattractive girl? Right? So I was like, homely.
Yeah. Why would you want a homely girl that stays home?
Right? But I didn't know what it meant. I would read these things as looking for a homely girl, homely, or homely boy.
Well, now we're all homely.
So. We are.
So Wendy, really quickly as we wrap up, 121 dates. I got to find out why. Oh, so is that your book, or did you go on the dates?
I wrote a book about going on 121 first dates, because I didn't mean to do that. I never meant to be a serial dater. I thought I'd go on 3 dates, but I knew what I was looking for, and it was just really hard to find. Really, really hard to find. And unlike Auntie Seema's advice, I wasn't willing to adjust. Nope, I was just going to hold out until I met the one that was the right match for me.
So what's the name of that book, so everyone who wants to go on 121 dates can read it?
121 First Dates.
Okay, and it's available on Amazon?
Yes, and I have 28 short stories of actual dates, some of them horrifying, some of them hilarious.
Oh, that's another show we need to have, the horrifying dates. But thank you, everybody. And thank you for all those who tuned in. I hope you enjoyed our show. And I hope you enjoyed everyone sharing their views and got something out of it. And yes, everyone keeps asking me about my matrimonial agency. Soon, relax. But it's not going to be cheap, okay? It's a lot of work to find a life partner. And I actually ended up marrying my own client, believe it or not. So yes, and Mr. Gill still hasn't paid me what he owes. But anyway, thank you all, and thank you, Raiders in the
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fun.